Welcome to Skytech-Lens. It began with a bold handshake and a promise of a new era in U.S.-South Korea economic partnership. In July 2025, President Trump announced a $350 billion trade deal with South Korea, touting it as a major win for his administration. The deal was presented as a straightforward exchange. The U.S. would lower tariffs, and South Korea would invest massively in American projects. But almost immediately, cracks appeared. South Korean officials clarified that the $350 billion wasn't a cash payment, but a complex package of loans, guarantees, and equity stakes. This subtle but crucial distinction changed everything. For Trump, the image of a direct payment was politically powerful. For South Korea, the reality was far riskier. The initial celebration faded as both sides realized they were telling very different stories to their publics. What began as a symbol of cooperation quickly became a source of confusion and distrust. The gap between Washington's rhetoric and Seoul's reality widened, setting the stage for confrontation. The handshake that was meant to unite now threatened to divide. The deal promised American jobs and growth, while South Korean companies would get relief from punishing tariffs. On paper, it looked like a win-win. But the details told a different story. South Korea's $350 billion investment was to be spread across loans, guarantees, and equity, standard for international deals, but not the cash windfall Trump described. The sheer scale of the commitment alarmed South Korean economists. Draining up to 84% of the nation's foreign currency reserves for this deal was seen as a direct threat to financial stability. The risk: a sudden outflow could leave South Korea dangerously exposed to global shocks. The promise of lower tariffs began to look like a small prize compared to the potential disaster. Public debate in Seoul turned anxious and skeptical. Was avoiding tariffs worth risking the country's economic foundation? The $350 billion figure, once a symbol of opportunity, now loomed as a warning. The handshake deal was rapidly becoming a source of national anxiety. For South Korea, economic instability is a living memory. The $350 billion deal revived fears of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, when depleted reserves led to collapse and IMF intervention. That trauma taught South Korea the value of strong financial defenses, especially healthy foreign reserves. Draining those reserves now felt like repeating past mistakes. Unlike Japan, whose yen is a global reserve currency, South Korea's won is vulnerable. The government, haunted by 1997, was determined not to risk another collapse. Public anxiety soared, and reassurances did little to calm fears. The debate shifted from tariffs to survival. Protecting hard-won prosperity became the nation's rallying cry. Facing the risk of a currency crisis, South Korea demanded a currency swap line with the U.S. Federal Reserve as a non-negotiable condition. A swap line would provide emergency access to U.S. dollars, protecting the won from speculative attacks. Without it, the $350 billion investment could trigger the very crisis Seoul feared. Even before the deal was finalized, the won was weakening, fueling market anxiety. Analysts warned that without a swap, the currency could plunge further, destabilizing the economy. For President Lee's government, the swap was the ultimate insurance policy. They were flexible on investment details, but the swap was their red line. Without it, the deal was a one-sided gamble. The message to Washington was clear: help us protect our economy, or there's no deal. The swap wasn't just a technicality, it was the only way to make the deal viable. South Korea was willing to invest, but not at the cost of its own stability. The ball was now in Washington's court. South Korea's request for a currency swap was met with a firm no from Washington. The Trump administration focused on the headline investment, offering only vague reassurances. U.S. officials compared South Korea to Japan, ignoring crucial differences between their economies. For Seoul, the refusal felt like a betrayal. Washington was prioritizing its own gain over its allies' stability. The risk of a currency collapse became real, and goodwill evaporated. Negotiations turned into a tense standoff. South Korean officials felt strong-armed, especially with Trump's demand for 90% of future profits from Korean equity stakes. The consensus in Seoul enduring tariffs was safer than risking catastrophe. Washington's inflexibility pushed its ally to the brink. The deal, once a symbol of partnership, now looked like a trap. South Korea prepared to walk away. The failed negotiations sparked a political crisis in South Korea. President Lee faced fierce criticism, accused of surrendering to U.S. pressure. Opposition parties threatened impeachment, framing the deal as a betrayal of sovereignty. Public anger exploded after U.S. authorities raided a Hyundai plant in Georgia, detaining hundreds of Korean workers. The timing was seen as intimidation, fueling anti-American protests in Seoul. Labor unions organized strikes and the government's legitimacy was under siege. Accepting the deal without a currency swap became politically impossible. The trade dispute had become a matter of national pride. South Koreans demanded their government stand firm. This trade dispute unfolded amid rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific. For South Korea, economic stability is inseparable from national security. With North Korea unpredictable and China assertive, any sign of weakness could be dangerous. A financial crisis would undermine Seoul's leverage with both Pyongyang and Beijing. Washington's refusal to provide a swap line was seen as a strategic blunder. South Korea's leaders believed economic strength was essential to maintaining sovereignty. Accepting a risky deal would weaken their position in a volatile region. For Seoul, this was about more than money. It was about survival. The collapse of the deal is a gamble for both countries. For Trump, it's a blow to his economic platform and a strain on a key alliance. The U.S. must now choose between keeping high tariffs or backing down without a deal. For South Korea, refusing the deal means enduring tariffs but avoiding financial disaster. President Lee is betting that resilience and public support will outweigh the pain. The standoff leaves both nations vulnerable, economically and strategically. South Korea faces a tough road, balancing hardship against catastrophe. Washington risks alienating a vital ally in a tense region. Both sides hope the other will blink first. The outcome will shape the region's future. All eyes now turn to the upcoming Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Gyeongju. It's the first face-to-face meeting between Trump and Lee since the deal's collapse, a last chance for compromise or a formal split. Trump wants a deal he can tout as a victory. Lee demands financial safeguards. The memory of past crises makes Seoul risk-averse and resolute. Without a currency swap or major restructuring, South Korea won't budge. A recent U.S. concession to move away from an all-cash demand offers a glimmer of hope, but the core issue remains. Will either side blink, or will tariffs and tension become the new normal? The summit's outcome will ripple across Asia and the world. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.